over 80% of the pollution in the ocean arrives by rivers. If people on canals in the UK could just change one thing, and if you do
Hmm.
that 1,000 times over, then you are going to have a major impact on what dumps down into the oceans.
This week, I continue the conversation with the green boater, Bruno Hoffman, as he goes on to talk about his mission to encourage 1 million boaters to change one thing in order to make a difference to the ocean. Welcome to part two of Boating of a Different Kind. My name is Marianne and I am part-time boater. The oceans and the seas are where the pollution ends up. It usually starts in the canals and the rivers before it even reaches the oceans and the seas. Talking environmentally, what are the policies of the marina to deal with waste? Do they also offer recycling?
Yeah. So almost every marina now has recycling stations, and
Okay.
it's not legislated yet, but it's coming. And there is a group that also offers a program where you can certify your marina to a certain degree of environmentally friendliness. And one of them includes offering a recycling station where you can separate your
Hmm.
plastic and bottles and
Okay.
cardboard, things that you can move off, as well as your trash. So most marinas will have some form of a recycling station, and those that don't, people are usually boaters, I find, are usually pretty good with keeping those kind of things on board. I myself encourage people not to bring things on board that we can't recycle, and if they do, say bring drinks on board, I prefer tins to glass, because tins can be crushed and
Okay.
then they can be kept and stored on board until we get to a place where we can offload them, and it reduces the space for garbage. So in that regard, it's pretty good. In terms of pump outs, it is illegal to dump raw sewage into harbors. And
Right.
so there has to be a pump out within a certain distance of every moorage within a harbor. So most of the major harbors offer that service. And if it's a public marina, they offer it for free. And
Hmm.
their private marinas, if you are mooring at that marina, they include that with your moorage fee. And in
Okay.
some cases, if it's a resort, you can come up and pay a pump out fee, and they can take it away for you. However, where it gets a little bit interesting is that if you are a certain distance from shore, and if you're in certain depth of water, you are allowed to dump raw sewage into the ocean. And it's a point of contention because we have cruise ships that travel from Vancouver, as well as from Seattle, south of us, and from Los Angeles, that go up to Alaska, and they cruise right up inside our passage where all the whales are and all the
Yes.
wildlife, and they dump their sewage. They're not supposed to, but they do. And so it's been interesting since COVID. These cruise ships, many of them stopped coming because the passengers
Yeah.
come. Well, all of a sudden, our oceans are cleaner. There isn't any
Yes.
sewage floating around. So that's about a contention. However,
Wow.
um, there is there is there are products now that you can put in your holding tank that actually act as an enzyme that eat. It's a bacteria, and it actually eats human waste.
Right.
Urine, if it can be separated, actually isn't toxic. It can go into the ocean. It will actually, salt water and urine are fine. It's inert. But obviously, the bacteria from human waste isn't. So there are
No.
products that you can purchase that you can add to your holding tank, and especially for people who are cruising on a full-time basis, like for weeks and weeks at a time, these are
Hmm.
perfect because it's a living enzyme and it has to be fed. If it doesn't have food, it dies. What does it need for food? You have to go to the bathroom. And so I have several videos actually on my YouTube channel that actually talk about this, and it's products that I deploy on my boat as well. So this enzyme eats through the bacteria, and it creates water. It turns everything into water. What's left is just a little bit
Oh,
of sludge at the bottom of your holding tank that is the bacteria that continues to eat. And so it's a wonderful system. But unfortunately, people need to be educated about these things, and they are used to the
mm,
old ways of doing things. Go out, 7 miles from land or wherever it is into
yeah.
deep water and just dump it out. Or people are using the pump out stations. There are people that violate this all the time. There's nobody
Mm,
monitoring it. How can you monitor 16,000 miles of coastline? I think
yeah.
somebody told me once there was something like 100 fisheries officers employed along this coastline, and only half of them are on duty at any one time. So 50 people to monitor all these places. It
Oh
doesn't
my
happen.
word.
So it's now
No.
self-monitoring. So we're just relying on people to get educated, informed, and be passionate about caring for your environment, knowing that if you put human effluent or trash or toxins into the water, it's going to
Mhm.
kill wildlife. It's going to kill the
Yes.
ecosystems that are supporting the wonders that we see: clean oceans and whales and seals and dolphins. Uh, our ecosystem has to be protected. We need to change our behavior.
Going back to the cruise ships that cruise the passage up on your coastline, why don't they use this bacteria in their own ships, or do you happen to know if they are going to be taking that step?
You know, um, what I have been so I don't really get connected too much to the cruise ship industry, but I do hear information coming from some of the people that are supplying products to them. And some of the newer ones now have basically designed into their systems, they have designed waste treatment plants right on the boat.
Right.
So they treat the sewage to a place where it doesn't have the chloroform and the bacteria count, and they can safely put it into the ocean. The older ones aren't; they can't be retrofitted. So these
No.
new ones, it comes at a premium. It's a price. Adding these additives into these tanks requires a little bit of re-engineering in some cases, because you have to draw the effluent out at a certain place. It has to stay in there at a certain place. It can't be bouncing around too much. So, and I think it's costly for a boat that size. For a boat my size, it costs the same as if you were going to put some kind of additive in there that a lot of recreational vehicle owners use, some kind of a
Hmm.
tank treatment, which is mostly
Okay.
toxic chemicals, just makes it smell nice. So it's about the
Right.
same price. I don't know if it could be produced commercially for these folks. Doesn't seem to be an interest for them. So it's a good question, and it's like anything we find out, right, Marianne? We go, why isn't this being done? There are solutions. Sometimes it's
Yes.
cost, sometimes it's behavior, sometimes it's the practicality of it. I mean, these guys are running a
Mhm.
business, so anything where
Yes.
they can, especially lately with COVID, they're all hurting. So if they can save money and say, we'll just throw it into the ocean, nobody checks anyways.
Yeah.
So it's got to be a behavior change. It's got to be a legal change. How do you monitor it? Maybe it's need to be engineered and designed differently. Maybe they need to say these boats are no longer allowed on the ocean, like they have in California with electric cars in 10 years. There won't be any gas
Yes.
cars.
Yeah.
So I think we're going to get to that too in boating.
I do hope so because cruising, I haven't been on many cruises, I've been on a couple, but one of them was that cruise you just mentioned from Vancouver up to
Yeah,
Alaska. It was beautiful,
yeah.
but I just didn't know what they were doing with the waste. If that's what they were doing, that's horrific.
Well, and the other thing I've seen with them, and I can tell you this firsthand, there's a place called Blackfish Sound, which is at the very northern part of Vancouver Island. And if you can
Mm.
imagine like the Pacific Ocean, and the salmon go out, come from our rivers, go out into the ocean. They live there for 3 to 5 years, and they feed out in the ocean, and they fatten up, and they come down from Alaska, and they come down along the coast, and they have to go through a very narrow pass called Blackfish Sound. And
Right.
this little pass is where they feed before the salmon are going down there, and the whales, the humpback whales and orca, come there to feed in a certain time of the year because this is in the autumn, and they're all coming down there
Mm.
because they kind of got to the rivers to spawn. It's the same place the cruise ships have to go through. And it's a very narrow pass, and there's very
Right.
wild rapids and things like that. But that's where the whales feed. And this is an area that I have to avoid with my small boat, my 50-foot boat. These cruise ships are coming through there, just plowing through there. And I think it's on a Friday. They cycle on a Friday and a Monday, I think, like that. And they're just barreling through there. And they're not only disrupting the feeding patterns of the whales, but they're disrupting the whole ecosystem. And the noise pollution from
Mm.
their propellers confuses whales because they need sonar to communicate and to find their
Yeah.
food and to navigate. And so you hear of whales beaching because they don't know where they are, or you see orcas starving because they can't find their food. And so not just cruise ships, but freighters and jet skis and anybody that's putting noise in there. It's a compounding problem. And I challenge you,
Yeah.
and maybe this is a clip I can show you. There is a live radar, an AIS radar that has tracks all the ships in the ocean, and at any point in time right now, and you'd be amazed when you see this map of the ocean,
Mm.
the hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of thousands of boats that are out there creating
Wow.
noise, dumping things. It's no wonder our oceans, they just can't deal with it anymore. We have to change.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I think if I had known that at the time we booked our holiday, this was many years ago that I did that trip, I probably wouldn't have gone.
Well, and now you can check. Like, I think I don't know which cruise lines it is, but if you Google it, there's a couple of new boat designs that have come out, and they are coming out with silent running engines. Some of them are
Hmm.
going hybrid, electric. The latest boats that have been purchased for our local ferry system, the BC ferry, because we have a lot
Hmm.
of coastline and we need to
Yeah.
shuffle people around. I can't get to my boat without taking a ferry. So they've employed hybrid boats that are I think they're powered by natural gas, and so they're
Okay.
quieter and fuel efficient. But what I'm surprised to hear, and this is more encouraging, is I have been connected to the super yacht industry. There's a community over in the Mediterranean, and there's one gal, she calls herself the Green Stewardess, and she enlightened me to this whole super yacht industry. I thought the super yachts were the ones that were the nasty polluters because they are big yachts with billionaires on
Mm.
them. They don't care, spend more money, burn more fuel. It is amazing what is happening in the super yacht industry. The people who are now hiring super yachts are young, rich executives with their families that want to go and have a great experience. They spend a lot of money to hire these things, so they have a crew and gourmet food. But
Hmm.
the people who are outfitting these boats, the stewardesses, are all about the environment. They're using filtered water. They're not, dumping things in the ocean. They have filtration systems. They
Hmm.
use environmentally friendly cutlery and everything. And some of these boats, when they're anchored in a harbor, they have, because they can afford this, they have little robots that swim around the boat, and they make sure that any grease or oils that are floating off the hull are eaten up. So
Oh.
I was like, I was aghast because I thought, okay, I can understand cruise ships and freighters, but I didn't think that super yachts cared. But it's a growing trend in the super yacht industry. And of course, super yachts, they don't care how much money they spend on building them. They can design anything in them. And if they want
Yes.
to attract these young nouveau riche who are concerned for the environment, they have to be shown to be doing something. So that's encouraging. So next time, rent a super yacht. Don't go on a cruise on a cruise ship.
Yeah, I think a super yacht might be out of my budget there,
Well, it's only
Bruno.
$10,000 a day. Come on. It's good for the environment.
Well, yes, it's probably better for the environment if I stay off of the ocean.
Yes.
But no, that is really quite interesting. I will have to do some research and see which
Yeah.
cruise companies actually deal with their waste in an eco-friendly way if
And
ever I want to go cruising.
it's no different than a lot of corporations these days. Everybody is trying to find a green message to sort of attach their brand to. So you
Yes.
have big companies that are talking more about their environment and their environmental footprint. And so these large cruise ship and travel companies, they are starting to talk about this as well. So it's becoming a marketing point and a differentiator, because there are
Yeah.
people like yourself say, hey, if I could choose between these two cruise companies and this one here treats their sewage, I'm going to go with that one. It may
Yeah.
cost $100 a week more, but I'm more concerned about that.
Absolutely. Because up until just recently, well, I said to my sister, I don't want to go on another cruise because that's a moral choice that I can make, is to not go cruising. And even though the cruise ships are still cruising, I don't want to be part of that. But if there are eco-friendly cruise ships out there that satisfy my moral code,
Yes.
then I would be willing to go cruising, because that also supports the cruise crew members who are not necessarily well off. And
Yes.
but for the cruise ship, they would be out of work. They
Yes.
would not be able to send money back to their families. So there's that whole wider moral context that I would not be supporting if I didn't go cruising.
Yeah.
So but there
I
is a
think through
balance, you know.
throughout industry, and it includes the boating industry, there, I think we can have both. I think we can enjoy. I mean, look at
Mm,
canal river boating, right? Or canal boating. There's ways in which you can always be better. You can still enjoy
yes.
it, but let's just take a little bit more care with our trash and what we put in there and how fast we go, and just get people
Yes.
educated and offer, you talked about services for recycling, so let's lobby groups that can do that. So I think we
Mm.
can have both. It can't be one extreme or the other, can it?
No, I would like to think it isn't one extreme or the other. There must
Yeah.
be a happy medium that satisfies a few more,
Yeah.
ticks a few more of those boxes, I would say.
Yeah.
Okay, well, that's interesting information to me personally, anyway. I hope my viewers will enjoy that too. Um, I asked about what do you do with your waste on the boat and everything. But if you are at sea for, is it 3 months
Yeah.
at a time? So you use that enzyme in your waste tank and then you can dispose of it into the ocean safely.
Yes, but I also just to be clear, when I go ocean cruising, it's called coastal cruising. We have a unique dynamic here on the west coast of British Columbia, is that you can cruise most of our coastline on what they call inside passages. There's always a group of islands that protect you from the big heavy ocean
Okay.
systems, weather and waves. We can still get a good blow coming through, but I'm never in like these big swells. Like I can't take a big
Okay.
30-foot wave over my boat. It wouldn't work. It would blow up my windows. So I'm a coastal cruiser, which means I'm always within the coastline. I can always see the coast somewhere.
Okay.
And there's one part going from the coastline over to what they call Haida Gwaii. I would be out of sight of land for about 8 hours. But for the most part, I'm on the inside. So there's always a place to go. And there are places where there's pump outs all along the way.
Okay.
And if not, we have some of the most amazing currents and tides in the world. So the reason why you're allowed to drop untreated sewage into our waters is you've got tides that are going, sometimes they're flowing at, in certain areas, the rapids are going sometimes 16, 17, 20 knots. Or
Right.
you've got tide changes in one area. The tide difference from when you arrive and the time you
Hmm.
leave in an 8 hour period, the tide has changed 16 to 18 feet. The difference in the height. What that means, can you
Oh,
imagine a whole bay that's, say 10 square miles, and it's filled up with another 20 feet of water, and that water is all moved out within 8 hours. So there's a lot of water, what they call vertical or horizontal movement of water. We have
right. Okay.
vertical movement and we have horizontal movement. And so things disappear very quickly. And if you fall overboard and you don't tell people exactly where if you don't tell somebody where you drop something overboard, it could be anywhere. It could be
Right.
miles and miles away within a few days because we have such high currents. So that cleanses the tide, the water cleanses all that stuff. It moves it around. Doesn't mean it treats it, but certainly that's why I think this law exists that says if you're within or outside a certain boundary of land, you can dump because it's in fast moving water. Just flushes it
Uh,
out to the ocean, which is not good.
well, no, it has to go somewhere, doesn't it?
It does,
And
yeah.
there's, yeah, it doesn't really bear thinking about. as to where it ends up and what damage it does. So it's far better
Well,
if
and it's not just effluent. It's also whatever goes down your sink, right? If you're shampooing your hair, or if you're washing
yeah,
dishes, um, or if you're using certain cleaners on your boat. I mean, there's some things that
yes,
we use in our kitchens at home. Well, they go to a sewage treatment plant and they get treated
mm,
before they get put out. But in a boat, they go straight in the water and they're highly
that's
toxic.
right.
And one
Yes.
area, and this sort of irked my daughter a little bit because she was in the whole essential oils for a while.
Okay.
And I know I might irk some of your viewers here, but essential oils are actually toxic because think about it. She was saying like she has these little vials. She says, "Dad, that takes like 1,000 lemons to make this." And I went, "Wow! Like you put 1,000 lemons,
Yeah.
whatever that acidic count is there, and you pour it into an aquarium with some fish, it'll die. They'll die because it's not natural. You can't."
No.
So, in fact, in waste treatment plants, essential oil vials are considered toxic. They don't want them. So,
Right.
so you have to be a little bit aware when they say, "Well, it's environmentally friendly or it's healthy for you." Just because it says this is healthy for you doesn't mean it's not toxic. So, I always talk about looking at what the ingredients are to see if they are what they call readily biodegradable. Can they
Right.
return to a natural state of carbon? Um, within a short period of time. If they can't, everything's considered biodegradable. I mean, even
Mm,
Chernobyl nuclear reactors are biodegradable, a
yeah.
million years from now. So you have to just understand when you're purchasing products, hair
Hmm.
shampoo, soaps, laundry detergent, dish detergent, waxes, cleaners for your boat, are they
Yeah.
used in a way in which that if they do end up in the ocean, that they're readily biodegradable? And if they're not, how can you catch them so they don't go in the ocean? And if there's teak oil that you use, some of it you can't use while you're on the water. Others you can. I found a product that was based out of the UK that when you washed your boat, the
Hmm.
soap from it was actually a protein and it was fish food. so so there's
Oh,
lots of products around. And you just have to do a bit of research. You just have to
yeah.
Google and find out. And they're coming out fast and furious as new companies and new executives are making products for boaters and recreational marketplace that are environmentally friendly.
What would your top tip be for boaters, for your
Yes.
community of boaters?
If you're talking about helping the environment,
Yes, I am.
okay. Well, I can only talk about my own journey, and it
Hmm.
actually started when my daughter. This is before I started the Green Boater. When she noticed something, and it was actually I don't know if you have these in the UK, but you would get a 6 pack of beer or soda, and it would be held
Yes.
together with these plastic rings. And
Yes.
I guess I'd been out for cruising with a bunch of friends, and my daughter came on board afterwards. And in the trash, in the rubbish bin, she found one of these things, and she held this up. This is my younger daughter. She speaks her mind, and she said, "Dad, do you know what this is?" I went, "Yeah, it holds beer." And she goes, "This kills turtles." I went, "What?" And she had
Yeah.
seen a YouTube video where I guess a turtle had swam through and held on to these things. Well, she I said, "Okay, I'm sorry." So she proceeded to cut it up so if it did fall in the water, it wouldn't do any damage. But then she put it in my recycling box, and that
Yeah.
was the beginning of why I started thinking about, yeah, what else do I do? So I think if there was one thing that I would
Mm.
recommend, it would be something that I've tried to now instill in myself and in my crew when I have people on board is that you own your garbage. So
Yes.
whatever you purchase, whatever you drag around with you, you own it. So that means you're responsible for what you do with it. You can complain all you want about the packaging, but if you've bought the product with packaging, you own it. So what are you going
Mm.
to do with it? And so on my boat, and I've done this a couple of times with some of my crews, I give them a little list. And it's surprising how excited they are to get this list and become a green boater. And I say, I say, you're about to come onto my boat. It's called Levita, and I adore her, and you will as well. And to make everybody's life a great experience, and to make sure that we are environmentally friendly, here's the things that I ask you to do. And so the first thing I say is, I said, just refuse. That's the R's, right? Refuse. Refuse to take things on board that can't be recycled. And
Hmm.
so, and the first tip I would say is just be careful what you purchase and what you
Yeah.
use, whether you're on land or on a boat, but especially on a boat because you can't get rid of it.
No.
So just be very careful about, just refuse to accept that stuff. And if that means trying to find a market that doesn't have um, plastic wrapped around a cucumber, or it means buying beer bottles instead of cans.
Yeah.
Now I notice what beer companies are doing. They're wrapping it in cardboard, and
Mm.
so the cardboard's biodegradable. But I
Yeah.
even say take that out, put it in a bag, put it in a cloth bag, take that cardboard and all the packaging off, and bring only on what you need so that it minimizes our garbage on board. So I think it's just being responsible for what you purchase and buy and use, and that covers a whole broad road of things. I mean, I have
Yeah.
another 100 tips, but I think if that was the one thing I would say for boat owners, whether you're on a canal boat or on a houseboat
Yeah.
or on an ocean boat, is do this yourself and tell your crew we're just going to be a boat that is going to practice limiting our garbage on board by refusing to accept things on board. And I've stopped people at the dock. I said, you can't bring that on board. Why not? And my boat has lots of room. I said, because
Yeah.
it's going to end up in the ocean. It's going to end up in the ocean. So take it home with you, leave it in your car, but it's not coming on the boat. And it's surprising. I thought that would get resistance. They all get excited. They all really get excited.
So you're when you give them this list, presumably it is a list, and there's
Yeah.
more than just one thing on
Yes.
there. That would be an interesting list to see.
I can share that with you and maybe offer that for your viewers. Oh, and it's also other things about. And I did this the first time I was on a sailboat because I heard we were going in this large sailboat and had lots of room. Well, that's relative, right? I mean,
Yeah.
it ended up being a 46-foot sailboat, and my wife and I, brought two hard-shelled luggage. And the people at the boat, they went, "What are you?" I said, "Well, you said you had a big boat." So I mean, it's just simple things like that. How you pack. You don't need a ton of
Yes.
stuff, and all the way through to the type of, if your crew comes aboard and they don't know anything about biodegradable soap and shampoos and that, then I
Yeah.
tell them, I have all my lists. Is here's the things that I have on board that you don't need to bring. Don't bring shampoo. Don't bring bar soap. Don't bring dishwashing liquid. Don't bring paper towel. This is all the stuff that's on my boat already. And I
Yeah.
have them use that because I know what's in it. And then when they use the facilities, when they go to the bathroom, when they go wash their hair and things like that. And then I advise them too about suntan lotion. And that's
Mm.
toxic for all kinds of reasons. So yeah, yeah. So that's another one. Take your stuff in a soft shell bag. Make sure that everything, there's no plastic. There's no plastic bags. That's not
Yeah.
allowed. And the products that you use, especially the toiletries and the day to day stuff you use in the kitchen and things like that. Yeah.
Yes. Oh, that's really good. So, as far as my canal boat viewers are concerned, I would say that there have been a lot of tips that you've mentioned in this conversation that are easily translatable
Oh,
to narrowboat dwelling or even land dwelling, if I'm perfectly honest.
yeah.
So I'm hoping that my viewers will take something away. And you are in favor of every person changing just one thing in their lives. And
Right.
that's, I think, really valuable. And if everybody just changed one thing, and then maybe once they've got that becomes a habit, change another one thing, we would soon be on the right path to a
Well,
more environmentally friendly environment.
I completely believe that because it started with me because my daughter said, "Dad, don't do that anymore." And look what's happened. She's inspired a whole movement, which now is
Yeah.
reaching, and all I'm doing is telling stories about the people that know stuff and
Yes.
then trying to live it myself. And I guarantee that the person who agrees to change one thing is going to change a lot more than that. They'll start living differently. They'll start thinking more
Yes.
about their responsibility on land as well. Because really, we're it's not just about the oceans and waters, although the earth is more water than earth, so it actually should be called the ocean, not the earth. But
Yes.
right, the air, the land, and the ocean are all, we've only got one of them, and they all interconnect. And so even in, and I've said this before on my channel, over 80% of the pollution in the ocean arrives by rivers. So
Yes.
people upstream, your community, you're the first line of attack. If if
Yes.
uh, if if people on canals in the UK could just change one thing, and if you do
Hmm.
that 1,000 times over, then you're going to have a major impact on what dumps down into the oceans.
I'd like to thank you, Bruno, for all your insights into environmentally friendly ways of being on a boat. And please tell my viewers where they can find you if they would like to follow you.
Well, absolutely. Well, first of all, it's been a pleasure. And yes, if you want to hear more about the journey I'm on with learning how to be a better green boater, you can find me at my YouTube channel, which is the Green Boater TV. You can also find me on Instagram and Facebook, the Green Boater. And yeah, I'm pleased that I can offer my journey about products and practices that help stop ocean pollution.
Well, thank you very much for that, Bruno. And I wish you luck in your goal. And I hope that a lot more people change just one thing to create a greener environment for all of us. So
Marianne,
thank
thank
you.
you, and thank you for this time and opportunity.
I hope you found Bruno's tips interesting and doable. Would you be willing to choose one thing in order to facilitate a greener lifestyle and to make a change and a difference to our canals, rivers, and oceans? If you have any tips that you would like to share, please leave them in the comments below so that other people can read them. It might encourage others to do the same. Please consider subscribing to my channel if you haven't already. Thank you to those of you who have subscribed. I really appreciate it. Thank you for watching, and until next week and next week's video,